Hey everybody, welcome to the Sales Factory. Coach Carroll here with another episode. And do I have an interesting guest for you this time? I'm with my man, Billy Stevens. And you may have never heard his name before, but I've got to tell you, I'd never heard of him until I was in Dallas a few months ago. And I was down there at Matt Monero's event. Matt Monero and Judge Graham, they had the Attack and Conquer boot camp, which you guys have heard me talk about. Credit Carl and I talked about. We were there together. But after the event on the second day, my good friend Jamie Waite, you guys may know him, the AC hero, he had a whiteboard entrepreneur party and had a bunch of people over. And so, we're there networking and stuff. And I see this guy that looks kind of like Chuck Norris. And I'm like, man, he's a little older guy. He doesn't really fit in. These are all younger cats here. I'm going to go talk to him. He's probably got some wisdom for me. And Billy was nice enough to sit down with me for I don't know, an hour, probably longer than that. And we just talked all things small business. Billy had a very successful plumbing business that he grew and exited. He started another plumbing business, and now he's got a company called Service Shift, which is completely disrupting the industry when it comes to the technology side and software of running a service business. And I'll let Billy tell you a little bit more about that. Super great guy, down to earth. Probably haven't met more of a real person. A lot of times when you talk to people that have grown big businesses and sold them, they kind of have an inflated ego. I didn't get that from Billy at all. So I wanted to invite him onto the Sales Factory podcast. Billy, thanks so much for coming on, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, so let's hop right into this, man. Give everybody a little background. I know Service Shift's your main focus right now, but in a short little capsule of time, kind of recoup for us everything that you've kind of done to get up to this point. I know you've been a pretty successful business owner in the past, and still a successful business owner in consulting. I know with your company, Billy Go there, but focused mainly now on the technology side and Service Shift. We talked a little bit about that, but let everybody know about your first plumbing company and how you got to where you're at right now.
Sure. Well, that was way back in '96. Well, most of you guys were in diapers, I'm assuming, back then. And I was basically working for a home builder, and we had this plumber, and he would come out and do the work, and he did real good work. And then he started being late, not showing up. And when I would confront him about it, they told me they were so busy that they just couldn't get to us. And I asked, well, what is it going to take to get you over there? He goes, well, I'll raise the prices 20% and I can be there in 3 weeks. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. You're gone. You're out of here. Well, I searched around for a couple of plumbers, for a couple of weeks, and never really got anyone interested in bidding our work. And this was new construction homes, and in Dallas in the late 90s, it started picking up a lot. So I went with my tail between my legs and basically went back over there to this little company called Berkey's that did new construction. And I said, look, guys, I guess I'll pay your 20%. Can you be here next week? And they go, well, we'll take your 20%, but it's 3 weeks from today, not 3 weeks from when we told you last time. And I'm like, what's going on here? And so we sit down and chat a little bit. About 2 months later, I was able to purchase the company. I paid $225,000 for this company.
Okay.
And it was doing about $1 million in revenue, new construction, and had a sprinkling of service. So I had to borrow $10,000 from my father-in-law. But the funny thing is, I paid him back in less than 2 months. I paid him back $10,000 with $500 interest in about 45 days. Just so happens that the AR was not being taken care of at that company, and we were able to retrieve $275,000 of uncollected AR in that first month of business, and we were off to the races. So basically, we didn't pay a dime for the company, and we were just going for it. But I figured I learned one lesson right away, and that lesson was that the builder was in control of my future. And so I needed to try something different, and I wanted to try service. And so at the time we were charging $45 an hour, and I raised it to 60 and figured we'd get rich, and nothing really changed. We were still barely making it with service. So at that point I was like, well, my new construction is doing well. I'll just sell it off and I'll take the proceeds from that. And I'll really start marketing and building this company and figuring out what to do. And I'm not being a technician or anything. In the past, I had a clean slate. I had the opportunity to look at things from a whole new direction. And that's what we did from day one. I didn't have money, of course, as you know. And so we built a very efficient business. The only way I could come up with money was not to actually spend it trying to run the business. So I focused on efficiency, and that was really the success that we had. So the more efficient we became, the better company we became, and therefore the company grew. Where all you hear now is grow, 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 grow. But if you grow and your costs and your inefficiencies are still there, you're still in the same spot you were, even though you're 5 million bigger or 1 million bigger or 500,000 bigger. Whatever you are, your cost is the same or even greater because you're adding layers of management and things like that. So we really focused on how do we run an efficient machine here. And by doing that, we created cash flow. And with that cash flow, we were able to grow, buy some businesses, and grow the company.
Yeah.
That's how I got started.
At Jamie's party, you told me something that was really interesting. We spoke up there that you guys would go through the phone book every year and call the plumbers that were in the phone book. And if the phone was disconnected, you would call and try to buy the phone number. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, yes, we had over 100 phone numbers ringing into our business.
Wow.
I don't remember the exact cost, but I want to say it was like $20 a month for each phone line, a year or a month, I think. It wasn't very much. And that's a lot how we grew our business. Because back then, when you moved, you had to change phone numbers. And there was this really old, long-standing new construction plumbing company just down the street where we were from us. And they decided to move out in the country because they sold their property for some more money in the city. And they moved out to the country and turned their phone off and changed their number. Well, for 20 years, they put stickers on their water heaters. So we went and grabbed that phone number. And immediately we were getting water heater calls, and we built a big customer base based on the fact that those guys left town. But they were still in business and doing great.
Wow. Just, it's working smart, not hard, right? Some of those things that you just mentioned there, like buying that company for $225,000 and going in and being able to just pull their accounts receivables that they were slacking on to pay for the company. Basically got it for free for a little bit of collections work. That's amazing, man. So you build this company up, you move to the point where you're ready to get rid of it. How did you transition from being a plumber into software? Because that's a pretty big leap, I got to think.
Well, everything we did to be efficient, we did on pen and paper. Okay. We had we had Successware back in the day, and really all it would do was dispatch. That was the thing that it would do. All the other stuff was too hard to work with. It would give you some reports, but it was basically one step above DOS. And then we went to ESC, I believe it was called. And it seemed a little bit fancier, but it really didn't do as good a job as Successware, in my opinion. And so with just a dispatching software, we were able to pull enough reports, build enough reports that we could start keeping up with KPIs and learning about our business. And I became an adamant student about how to read financials. And I had the greatest banker in the world, and he's still my great friend to this day. In fact, he just texted me this morning. And what we would do is every month when I'd get the financials in, we would sit down and he would take 2 hours of his day every month, and we would sit down and we would go through the financials of what that all meant and what we needed to do. And it always came back. He always gave me this advice that it's not how big you are, it's how much money you have left over. He just kept telling me that over and over and over. He said, cash flow's king. He just continued to just put that in my brain and never stop.
That's good, man. Yeah, we had talked about that at Jamie's too. You and I both had mentioned that you told me, you said, you got to find you a good banker. And I was like, I've had one since I was 18, because I think so many small business owners and entrepreneurs, they don't realize that having a good banking partner can make or break you. And I've come to the conclusion that sometimes, opportunities will pop up in front of me. And, if I didn't have my banking friends or partners, as I like to call them, they're partners in my businesses, I wouldn't have been able to capitalize on some of them. We just purchased a company in Lexington, and It was a great deal. I mean, we bought them for like, gosh, about 10% of what their gross revenue was for 1 year. And I didn't have the cash on hand to do it, but my bank's like, hey, you've been in business for a decade. You guys have never burned us. Here's the full amount. So I was able to go buy a company with zero money down. I think that's if you're listening to this right now, Billy's putting you onto something really important there. Find you a really good banker and make him your friend, and almost let him become a partner in the business, because you do need your bankers.
You definitely do. I always tell people there's two kinds of debt. There's good debt and bad debt. And the good debt is when you invest in your business so you can grow. And the bad debt is going out and buying a TV instead of buying a truck or a sewer machine.
Yeah. Good, man. So you saw some opportunity, it sounds like, in the plumbing business with the software that you guys are using. Is that what kind of sparked the idea to say, hey, I think I can do better than this?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Even today with the newest software, it's pretty much the same thing. There's some more marketing opportunities. It's easier for the techs to do what they do out in the field. But at the end of the day, it requires a lot of people inside the office to run any of the software that's out there today. And unfortunately, the way the software is built today, it's all put on the dispatcher. And if you know that every business, that anybody that's in the HVAC, plumbing, electrical space, which was what I was in and still in, your whole business revolved around the person dispatching the calls. They knew everything that was going on. The manager was in their ear. The CSRs are in their ear. The owner's in their ear. Everybody goes to the dispatcher. And fundamentally, that's wrong. That's the wrong way to build your business, in my opinion. It's the way we've all done it, but it's time to change. There's a better way. And I feel like with ServiceShift, we take the pressure off of the dispatcher and have all the information in the software itself. We eliminate the use of spreadsheets for KPIs because all the information is there. We eliminate all the inner office emails, which can number in the hundreds and maybe not even have anything to do with you. Worst of all, it's getting all these emails and they interrupt the fact that you're trying to build KPIs all day, not even running your business. That's what it's come to today is we're focusing on all these things to build, but we're not really focusing on how we can actually make a more efficient business. At the end of the day, if you're looking to exit, and probably most of us are, if you're listening to this podcast, you're going to get the exit dollars based on your cash flow. It's not about how big you are. We weren't the biggest company in Dallas. In fact, we probably weren't even in the top 5. But I tell you one thing I know for a fact, we made more money than those 5 did combined. And so we always felt that had to be the focus, and ServiceShift does that. It takes the inefficiencies, the chaos that comes with the dispatch-based software, and gets rid of that and spreads the information to everyone. It does dispatching itself, and now your dispatchers, who basically are your smartest people in the room because they know everything, they are now freed up to observe, and if there's an issue or whatever they need to correct, they can be on top of it, which they'll get messaged and things like that. But all that information of who got the job and why they got the job is all displayed right there, why the machine made that decision. The managers can look at it, the owners can look at it. Everybody knows what's going on. They know when the parts are ordered, who's bringing them, where they're coming from. All these things are right there. You don't have to email.
Yeah.
It does all of these things, which takes the burden off of the dispatchers themselves, and allows them.
I've got to do. It lightens up the human capital load too, right? I mean, if you can leverage the technology, maybe now you don't need 3 dispatchers. One can manage what 3 were doing.
That's correct. So from my experience growing my business, one good dispatcher is only capable of running 10 techs. That's it, because they're running 10 techs, CSRs, owners, managers, and whoever else is bothering them. Any more than 10 techs and they're inefficient, you have to go to a second dispatcher. So as you grow your business, you have to continue to do that. Now, not every dispatcher can handle 10. Maybe it's 8, 6, or some of them maybe do 12 or 14. But, at that point, they're very inefficient and a lot of things get lost.
Mm-hmm.
I think the worst thing in most businesses today is when the dispatcher calls in sick. That is probably the worst day of the year for anyone. And, it's bad enough when they just go to the restroom. But so what we tried to do was take all that burden off the dispatcher so that you can run a more manageable, more informed business, which will allow you to grow. And it at the same time, not only does it make your dispatchers more efficient, or maybe you haven't found the perfect dispatcher, so you need this to get going. It just takes someone to observe it. The owner can observe it, or whoever. Doesn't take constant attention. It will notify you if it needs attention. It's smart enough to figure out what are the best calls to run. And I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure everyone listening today has experienced this. Is, for instance, you have a full board for the day. There's no way you can take any more calls. And then the next thing you know, maybe you're getting a leaky water heater, or maybe you're getting a non-cooling breakers tripping on your air conditioning. You're getting those kind of calls. And you try to stack them up on top just to keep the customer waiting. But what you're doing is you're stacking them up on top of calls that maybe aren't that important. And a lot of most dispatchers do not like making that call. Look, right. We're not going to be able to get to you today due to our load. We need to reschedule you. And so the lesser priority calls end up being done, and those good money calls get pushed to the wayside. Maybe you get them tomorrow, or maybe you get them late that night if it's summer during the HVAC season. But what if you moved all the priority calls up to the front, and then the calls that were like, spring tune-ups, even though it got hot early and you're already busy replacing equipment or fixing equipment, what if those calls could be delayed, called automatically, moved to another day? The customer's given a little, whatever, $10 off, or whatever you decide you want to put in there for moving, kind of like when you get bumped off an airline.
Right.
And just give them something and they're fine. And don't make them wait. We have a policy when we're, at Billy Go, who is our beta testing company for Service Shift. There's a policy that if you bump a customer one time, that's the only time. You got to go the second time. But what we did is, once we built this technology and the dispatcher started working on its own, what we found out is most of the days that we would run, we had all what we would call priority one calls on the board, and no non-priority calls. Like in the plumbing industry, a leaky faucet is really not what we want to go do. There's really no money to be made in that because of all the trips that are involved, all the faucets that are out there. Mm-hmm. So those, in our opinion, are non-priority calls. It's probably been dripping for a month anyway, so they're not in a big hurry. So it'll automatically bump those kind of calls, and it will move up to the top, water heater replacement, whole house drains, things like that, so that you're actually maximizing your dollar for every call that you're doing. And
that's going to increase profitability too.
Absolutely. It increases profitability. It decreases stress in the office. It decreases the cost of your overhead in the office. It does a lot of these things. And the other neat aspect of Service Shift is we use what we call right now a widget, and it's embedded on your website. And everyone has a website, but if you're in the plumbing or HVAC space, it's very hard to get on the front page. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money. You got to write blogs, you got to do all these things. You spend all this money trying to get your website to page 1, because page 2 might as well be page 500. It means nothing. And with the widget, we found that 51% of our customers are now using the widget instead of calling. So we need less people to answer calls. And the widget is designed to help the customer, help us make decisions on when to schedule that customer without us having any human interaction.
Wow.
And by doing this, we can prioritize calls based on the input from the customer. And what happens is your website becomes a place of profitability once again. Even if you're on page 500, it no longer matters. What you need to do is you need to market your brand, and they will come to your website, And as you can see, when you see reports from Google that, maybe you got 15,000 or however many visits or views of your website or whatever, because you've been around or they heard of you, but no one really does anything. They look at it, maybe they call, but you can't KPI the fact of whether or not they called you because they looked at your website. It just, you can't do it.
Right.
But with this, you can.
Wow.
And so the thing about it is, you're now using your website as a lead source instead of just lingering on page 500 or page 2 or wherever it is. You're now using it as a lead source, and now it has value again.
Yeah.
And so these are the things that ServiceShift will bring to the market, and we call it ServiceShift because we're definitely shifting the foundation of what's happening out there.
I love the disruptiveness that you guys are talking about, because that's, for one, that's how you're going to make a lot of money. But for two, you're going to help a lot of people, because anytime you can switch up the way that things are done, I like to think that we do that with the power washing industry. We're very unique in the way that we handle our clients and are able to do projects in multiple states. It sounds like ServiceShift is going to be changing the game up for plumbing, HVAC, and electrical. Billy, do you guys have any plans to roll it out to other industries, or is it mainly just focused in those three?
No, well, of course, those three industries are what I know best, but it is designed to roll out into all industries. It will definitely help you in your industry. It doesn't matter if you're in pest control, if you're in a home service of any kind, the dispatching works the same. The prioritization is, you decide what's priority calls, and when you receive those, you put those to the front. You decide what's not priority, and you put those on your slow days. Typically you might have a day of the week that's not as busy as the other day of the week, or maybe towards the end of the month it's not as busy it was at the first of the month. Whatever it is, the machine itself, the software itself, will learn this and put these calls in those places, so that you can keep your guys busy every day, every week of the year.
Wow.
And so it does a lot of the thinking for you. I'm telling you, it does it. It does it all. We've spent a lot of time. I'm 2.5 years on this. At the 3-year mark, which is around April, is when we're going to release it.
Okay. That was going to be my next question.
3 years and a lot of thinking and a lot of work.
Absolutely, man. It sounds like it. I know it's something near and dear to your heart. We talked about it in depth at Jamie's house, and let's shift back to, I want to ask you, because obviously you're focused on the tech side now, but you've got a lot of experience in that home service business. What do you think is one of, if not the biggest mistake you see entrepreneurs or home service business owners making?
I think that the biggest deal is not creating a culture of success. I really think that is the biggest thing. As small companies, I see them all the time, companies that are 10, 20, 30 years old, and they can't get past $3 million, or maybe they get stuck there. And they have guys that have been there a long time. They do things the way they do. If they would invest in their culture, and it's kind of funny that we brought this up, because that's what we talked about. Jamie came over and saw me a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about building the culture in his business so he could take it to the next level. And if you get the people that are working with you every day to believe in what you're doing, and you have a direct path, and you understand where you're going, and they do also, you can get there. But it takes, in their meetings, if you have meetings weekly, which I highly recommend, the meetings aren't about complaints about what they're not doing right. The meeting shouldn't be about that. It shouldn't be about what you can do for the company. The meeting should actually go down to the simple fact that, how can I help you as an individual to succeed and reach the goals that you've set for yourself? And if you haven't even set any goals for yourself, let's start setting them now. And we do goal setting. And when we would talk to our techs about, where their goals were, we would let them establish what their sales would be that year. Instead of us going, I want you to do this, we would go, what do you realistically think you could do this year? And they would give us a number, and we're like, give us a number you're going to reach. Let's reach that one first. And so we did that, and then they would reach it, and then the confidence would go up, and then they would go to the next level. And before long, we had trucks that were doing, $1 million back in the, early 2000s.
Wow.
We had, on the average, I think we were around $700,000 a truck back then, back when, things were a lot cheaper. And then one thing we did find out, we didn't absolutely raise our prices to achieve all these goals that we had. For my guys to reach goals, we had to have a price that made sense, that we can make a reasonable profit, right? So it was up to us to cut the cost of doing business and then have a reasonable price, where now it's raise your price, raise your price, raise your price, and you do nothing about containing your cost. And it makes it harder to find. You're burning your techs out. You're making them sell things at extraordinary prices because you have to, because your business is insufficient, and you have to do these things. And at some point there's going to be a breaking point and the consumer is going to revolt. It just getting so high. So how can you make more money without being the highest in town? You cut your cost of doing business. And what I mean by that is not cut your people, make it more efficient. Cut the redundancies, cut out the stuff that doesn't matter. Let the software do it and grow your business.
I love it. What's one sales? I mean, obviously it's a sales factory. I've been having a lot of business owners on. We've been gearing a lot towards business lately. But what's one sales tip that you could give? Because I know a lot of times when guys start out, when they start a business, or ladies, when they start a business, they're the salesperson, right? And that's what I really focus on with my content, is teaching entrepreneurs how to sell, because I think it's so very important. If you can't sell, I see guys all the time. They say, hey, I'm a really, really good technician, so I'm gonna go start a business. Being the greatest technician in the world is not going to make the phone ring, and it's not going to close the deal. So what's something that you could give the listeners quickly here at the end as we're wrapping up, a little sales tip from Billy Stevens?
Well, my sales tip is actually anti-sales.
Okay, love it.
All right. So we think of things a little bit different. So we don't try to sell anyone anything. We build a system where we inform the customer and give them options. And those options are given to them in a way that they can make a decision. And when the customer feels like they're in power to make that decision, they're going to buy. You don't have to sell them a thing. And I learned this from a guy named Charlie Greer. He taught me a lot about this kind of stuff, but I saw it in action. And like our highest selling tech may not have been our best tech, right? But he understood, well, he was a good tech, but he wasn't the most outgoing guy, right? And so the guys that always rose to the top were the guys that actually stopped and listened to the customer, gave them options, allowed them to make a decision, and they made the sale. And that's my tip, is quit talking about selling and start talking about informing, educating, and allowing the customer to make a decision on their own with your professional input. And you'll be kind of a crazy thing happens when you do that. Then the customer goes, well, what would you do? And then there you go. Got it.
Yeah, and then you make the recommendation and close the deal.
That's correct. So stop focusing on selling when it comes to sales and start focusing on being that brand that you are out there marketing and representing and showing options and allowing the customer to make a decision, and then you'll be very successful.
Love it. Love it. Billy Stevens, man. Thanks for coming on the Sales Factory. Everybody, if you like this, make sure to leave a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to the podcast. And then make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you'll get notified on any future updates. I hope you enjoyed this, talking to Billy Stevens. Got to say, plumber extraordinaire from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, now moving into changing the game with service shifts. So you guys be on the lookout for that come around April 2020. Billy, thanks so much for coming on, buddy.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
All righty. Hey, everybody. It's Coach Carroll. If you enjoyed the interview, again, please leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. But real quick, I wanted to make a quick announcement. Ignite
2020 tickets are on sale. If you follow me on social media, you've probably been watching me the past couple weeks talk about this event. It's something that's I'm very passionate about and looking forward to. You can find all the details on the event at LouisvilleIgnite.com. It's also probably all over any of my social media channels, so you can find it there as well. We hope to see you there. Tickets are $250, but we do have some early bird discounts, so go check that out right now as soon as you're listening to this. And I hope to see you at the event. Thanks so much.